Yes.
3.5 years after the tsunami of 8 March 2008, where are we with Selangor? Now, firstly, they took over from Barisan Nasional. So, really, the little incremental improvements must be credited. I think they announced recently that the overall Selangor budget shows a plus compared to the BN era. But I think we must not confuse that with improvement in policy. It may well simply be that there has been improvement in plugging leakages in the delivery system. So any savings that we see in the state cannot be attributed to improved policy overall, but merely the plugging of leakages. Let's look at the negatives in the Selangor state government currently. They could have done better in delivering the much called for local council elections. Yes, they have the problem of legislation which has repealed it, but I think there were efforts by civil society initiatives to urge implementing simulated local council elections. They certainly could have tried it in Kelana Jaya, Subang, MBPJ, and if they had, that would have placed significant pressure on BN to perhaps look at the possibility of repealing. Now that's on the matter of local council elections. Selangor could have Wi-Fi'd the entire state. That would have certainly assisted in getting the alternative media out to even the outlying areas. We always hear of this complaint that the media is not a level playing field, and that the opposition, of course in Selangor, Pakatan is no longer the opposition, but they are still faced with the same predicament of the media being a non-level playing field. Wi-Fiing the state would have certainly helped. Third, last year, I think it was last year, they came out with Selangor Times, Mandarin and English. Really what is needed is a Malay daily newspaper, if you will. And I think certainly the Selangor state government could have taken the lead in offering the Malays in the interior area in Selangor an alternative to Sun Malaysia. Okay, has the Selangor government improved ethnic relations? Have they introduced significant improvements such as has seen a reduction of corruption? Again, you are using the previous BN regime as the benchmark, as the measurement. So certainly anything will probably be an improvement from the days when BN was ruling Selangor. I think in terms of ethnic relations, not enough has been done to make ethnic considerations in matters of policy irrelevant. Not enough has been done. Whilst the government may not be focused on ethnicity in the day-to-day administration, we have to understand that we have now inherited Selangor from a very ethnocentric BN regime. My point is, the Pakatan state government has not done enough to continue to make this irrelevant. For instance, we continue to even hear from within the Pakatan party mid-level leaders. For instance, they complain that not enough is being done for the Indians. Now, my personal view is that these sort of contentions ought really not to be entertained, because if the Pakatan government is or holds true to its common policy framework, then you're looking at reform without any consideration on ethnic demands. Corruption, again, like I said, anything's an improvement from what BN was giving us now. Now, one of the problems that I think was articulated that the state government was facing was sabotage from amongst the civil servants in the implementation of policy changes and what have you. I think in that regard, what emerged clearly was weakness in the state leadership in being unprepared to perhaps weed out the main individuals within the civil service that was undermining the new state government, and dealing with them effectively, even if need be to terminate. Sure, the state government would possibly face lawsuits, but I think that would have shown a very strong position on the part of the Menteri Besar, the Chief Minister, and the state leadership to deal effectively with civil servants who, it was said, were undermining the state and were frustrating efforts to implement new policies. I think in that regard, Tan Sri Khalid and in fact the leadership in the state government has shown weakness. We've not seen any real economic policy development within the state. Nothing to get us excited that perhaps the new state government led by Tan Sri Khalid, with his background coming from countries and from UNB, were prepared to introduce new policies, economic policies, to perhaps take Selangor up to another level. So I think in that regard, Tan Sri Khalid has been a bit of a letdown. Pakatan will only be able to retain if they can contain the cheating that BN is certainly going to bring into the next elections. If they cannot, and there is this concern that perhaps one reason they may not be able to is simply because Pakatan, as it seems now, themselves are not totally concretized on fundamentals. We've seen in the past how Hassan Ali has seemingly undermined the solidarity of the state government. Now, unless they can effectively deal with some of these problems, they may have difficulty retaining the seat. One, to contain the cheating that BN is certainly going to bring to the poll, and two, their own internal problems. If they cannot contain either or both, they may have problems retaining the state. We, MCLM, have already deployed Dr. Nedu Chelian in Kapar, P109. MCLM will not be looking at state constituencies, we just do not have the resources. Our focus is the need to take Putrajaya in order to implement the reforms that we are looking to have implemented. So our focus is essentially on Parliament.